My name is Dr. Sarah Collins, though my family has never known me by that title. To them, I'm just Sarah, the single sister who works somewhere in healthcare and keeps her personal life mysteriously private. I'm a pediatric neurologist at Children's Hospital, one of only 3 specialists in the state qualified to treat rare childhood brain disorders. I've spent 12 years building my reputation, publishing research and saving children's lives. But to my family, I'm just the odd one out who never married or had kids. My brother Michael married Victoria 5 years ago, and she made it clear from day one that she didn't approve of me. Victoria came from a traditional family where women were expected to marry young and start families immediately. At 34, my single status was apparently a personal affront to her worldview. "Don't you think it's time you settled down?" Victoria would ask at every family gathering, her voice dripping with false concern. "You're not getting any younger." I'd smile politely and change the subject. What Victoria didn't know was that I'd chosen my career over marriage, dedicating my life to helping children when others had given up hope. I worked 60-hour weeks, took calls at all hours, and found fulfillment in medicine that I'd never found in relationships. Michael knew I was a doctor, but not the extent of my success. He thought I was just a hospital employee, maybe a nurse or technician. I preferred it that way. My achievements spoke for themselves in my professional life, and I didn't need family validation. The Christmas incident happened last December. I'd been looking forward to the holiday gathering, having just completed a successful surgery on a 7-year-old with a rare brain tumor. I was exhausted but happy, ready to relax with family. Victoria called me 3 days before Christmas Eve. "Sarah, we need to talk about Christmas dinner." "What about it?" "Well, we've been thinking about the guest list and we want to keep it to immediate family only this year." I frowned. "I am immediate family. I'm Michael's sister." "Yes, but you're not really established. You don't have a husband or children. It's going to be couples with their kids, and we don't want you to feel uncomfortable being the only single person there." The audacity of her statement left me speechless for a moment. "Victoria, I've been attending family Christmas for 34 years. I know, but things are different now. We want to focus on real families, people who understand what Christmas is about, spouses and children together. So because I'm single, I'm not real family? Don't be dramatic. You just don't fit the dynamic we're trying to create." I could hear Michael in the background asking who was on the phone. Victoria covered the receiver, but I caught fragments of their conversation. "Told her about Christmas. She's upset, but better this way." When she came back on the line, her voice was firmer. "Look, Sarah, this is what's best for everyone. Maybe you can visit next week instead. Let me talk to Michael. He agrees with me. We both think you'd be more comfortable celebrating elsewhere." I hung up without saying goodbye. 20 minutes later, Michael texted, "Sorry sis, Victoria thinks it's better this way. You understand, right?" I didn't respond. For the first time in my adult life, I spent Christmas alone. While Victoria hosted her real family's celebration, I worked a hospital shift, caring for children whose parents would give anything to have them healthy for the holidays. The irony wasn't lost on me. Victoria excluded me for not having children, while I spent my career saving other people's children. Over the next few months, I distanced myself from family gatherings. When Michael called to invite me to his son Tommy's birthday party, I politely declined. Victoria had made her position clear. I wasn't family unless I fit her traditional mold. Michael and Victoria's marriage seemed perfect from the outside. They had a beautiful house in the suburbs, 2 cars, and 6-year-old Tommy, who was the center of their world. Victoria had quit her marketing job to be a full-time mother, while Michael worked in sales to support their lifestyle. What they didn't know was that my lifestyle was quite different from what they imagined. I lived in a modest apartment by choice, preferring to spend my considerable salary on medical research and charitable causes. I owned a luxury car but drove an old Honda to family events to avoid questions about my finances. In March, everything changed. I was in my office reviewing patient files when my phone rang. Michael's number. "Sarah." His voice was shaky, panicked. "I need your help." "What's wrong?" "It's Tommy. He's been having these episodes, seizures maybe? The doctors here don't know what's wrong. They want to transfer him to Children's Hospital." My blood ran cold. "What kind of episodes?" "He'll be playing normally, then suddenly he'll stop responding. His eyes roll back and he makes these strange movements. It lasts maybe 30 seconds, then he's confused and tired. I was already pulling up my schedule, canceling appointments. Michael, where are you? St. Mary's Emergency. They're talking about transferring him tonight. I'll meet you at Children's Hospital. What room? How do you know they'll have a room ready? I paused, realizing I'd revealed too much. I have connections there. Just tell me when you're leaving. 2 hours later, I watched the ambulance pull up to Children's Hospital. I'd already reviewed Tommy's medical records, consulted with the emergency team, and prepared for every possible scenario. From the medical records and Michael's description, Tommy likely had a rare form of childhood epilepsy, possibly Landau-Kleffner syndrome or a related disorder. These conditions required immediate intervention and ongoing specialized care. I stood in the hallway as they wheeled Tommy into the pediatric ICU. Michael and Victoria followed, both looking terrified and exhausted. Victoria was crying, clutching Michael's arm. What if they can't help him? What if no one knows what's wrong? The neurologist here is supposed to be one of the best, Michael said, trying to sound confident. Dr. Collins. The nurse said she specializes in exactly this kind of thing. I stepped back into the shadows as they passed, my heart breaking for their fear while knowing I could help their son. The attending physician, Dr. Martinez, approached them in the waiting room. I watched from a distance as he explained the situation. We need Dr. Collins to examine Tommy, he said. She's our top pediatric neurologist, and based on the symptoms, this is exactly her area of expertise. When can we meet her? Victoria asked desperately. She's reviewing his case now. She'll be in shortly. That's when I made my decision. I couldn't let Tommy suffer because of Victoria's prejudice against me. I couldn't let my nephew go without the best possible care because his mother had excluded me from Christmas dinner. I went to the physician's lounge and changed into my white coat, the one with Dr. Sarah Collins, Pediatric Neurology, embroidered on the pocket. For the first time in months, I was about to show my family who I really was. I walked down the hallway toward Tommy's room, my heart pounding. Through the window, I could see Michael and Victoria sitting beside their son's bed, holding his small hands and whispering encouragement. They had no idea that the sister Victoria had dismissed as not real family was about to become the most important person in their lives. I knocked on the door and stepped inside. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson? I'm Dr. Collins. Victoria looked up, her tear-stained face showing confusion, then recognition, then complete shock. Sarah, she whispered. Hello, Victoria. I'm here to help Tommy. The silence in the room was deafening. Victoria stared at me in my white coat, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Michael looked between us, clearly confused by the tension. Sarah. Michael stood up slowly. You're Dr. Collins? You're the neurologist. I am. I moved to Tommy's bedside, checking his monitors while maintaining my professional composure. I've reviewed his case. We need to run some additional tests. Victoria found her voice. This is impossible. You work in healthcare, but you're not a doctor. You can't be a doctor. I pulled out my credentials and handed them to Michael. Board certified in pediatric neurology. 12 years of practice. I specialize in rare childhood seizure disorders. Michael read the credentials twice, his face showing dawning realization. Sarah, why didn't you tell us? Because it wasn't relevant to family gatherings. Victoria stood up abruptly. I want a different doctor. Someone else needs to treat Tommy. Victoria. Michael looked shocked. She's the best neurologist in the state. The other doctors said so. I don't care. She's not touching my son. I kept my voice calm and professional. Mrs. Thompson, Tommy has symptoms consistent with Landau-Kleffner syndrome or a related disorder. Without proper treatment, he could develop permanent cognitive impairment or lose his ability to speak. You're lying to scare us. I'm explaining the medical reality. I pulled up Tommy's brain scans on the monitor. These abnormal electrical patterns need immediate intervention. Michael stepped closer to the screen. What does that mean? It means Tommy's brain is having seizures that are affecting his language centers. Each episode damages his ability to process and produce speech. Victoria looked at her son, then back at me. And you can fix this? I can treat it. The sooner we start, the better his chances of full recovery. How long have you been a doctor? Michael asked quietly. 12 years. I completed my residency at Johns Hopkins, fellowship at Boston Children's Hospital. I've published research on this exact condition. Victoria sank back into her chair. All this time you've been saving children's lives while you decided I wasn't family enough for Christmas dinner. The words hung in the air between us. Michael looked confused, but Victoria's face crumpled. Sarah, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You assumed because I was single that I was somehow less than. Tommy stirred on the bed, making a small sound. I immediately checked his vitals, adjusting his medication dosage. What's happening? Victoria jumped up. He's stabilizing. But we need to start treatment immediately. I turned to face them both. I need your consent to begin the medication protocol. Victoria looked at Michael, then at me. What does the treatment involve? High-dose steroids to reduce brain inflammation, followed by specialized anti-seizure medications. He'll need to stay here for at least a week while we monitor his response. And if we don't treat him, the seizures will continue damaging his brain. He could lose his ability to speak permanently, develop learning disabilities, or worse. Michael signed the consent forms without hesitation. Do whatever you need to do. Over the next week, I practically lived at the hospital monitoring Tommy's progress. The steroid treatment was working, his seizures decreased significantly, and his brain scans showed improvement. Victoria and Michael took turns staying with Tommy, but I noticed Victoria watching me during my rounds. On the fourth day, she followed me out of the room. Sarah, can we talk? I stopped at the nurse's station. About Tommy's treatment? About Christmas? About everything. I continued reviewing charts. I'm focused on my patient right now. Your patient is my son. Your nephew. I looked up at her. Is he family now? Because 3 months ago you made it clear I wasn't. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I was wrong. I was completely, horribly wrong. Yes, you were. I judged you for being single, for not having children. I didn't know you were spending your life saving other people's children. Would it have mattered if you had known? She was quiet for a moment. I want to say yes, but honestly, I don't know. I was so caught up in my own narrow view of what family should look like. And now I see that you've been more family to Tommy in 4 days than I understood in 6 years. I set down the chart. Victoria, I didn't become a doctor to prove anything to you. I became a doctor because I wanted to help kids like Tommy. I know, and I'm grateful. More grateful than I can express. Don't be grateful yet. Tommy still has a long recovery ahead. But he will recover? I nodded. His response to treatment is excellent. With continued medication and therapy, he should make a full recovery. Victoria broke down crying in the hallway. I almost lost him. And I almost lost you. You didn't lose me. I was never yours to lose. I want to make this right, Sarah. I want us to be family again. I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse mixed with fear. Victoria, I don't need your validation to be family. I'm Michael's sister. I'm Tommy's aunt. That's not something you can take away. But I tried to. Yes, you did. And now you know better. Over the next few days, Victoria's entire attitude changed. She asked questions about my work, listened to my explanations about Tommy's condition, and even thanked the nurses for their care. On Tommy's last day in the hospital, she brought me coffee during my morning rounds. Sarah, I have a question. What is it? Next Christmas, will you come to dinner? Please. I smiled for the first time since the whole ordeal began. Are you sure I'm real family now? You've always been real family. I was just too stupid to see it. Then yes, I'll come to Christmas dinner. Michael joined us as I was discharging Tommy. Sarah, I owe you an apology too. I should have stood up for you. You were trying to keep peace in your marriage. I was being a coward. You're my sister and I let Victoria exclude you. It's okay, Michael. Sometimes we need to see clearly before we can act clearly. Tommy was fully recovered within 6 months. His speech returned completely and his brain scans showed no lasting damage. He's now a happy, healthy 7-year-old who calls me Aunt Dr. Sarah. Victoria and I will never be best friends, but we found mutual respect. She learned that family comes in many forms and I learned that forgiveness sometimes takes time. Last Christmas, I sat at their dinner table wearing the watch Tommy had given me, engraved with "World's Best Aunt." Thank you, Victoria said quietly as we cleaned up after dinner. For what? For saving my son. For forgiving me. For being family even when I didn't deserve it. That's what family does, Victoria. We show up when it matters most. She nodded, finally understanding what I'd known all along, that love and commitment make a family, not traditional structures or social expectations. And sometimes the person you exclude from your Christmas dinner turns out to be the one who saves your child's life. The invitation arrived on elegant cardstock, hand-delivered to my office at the hospital. Dr. Sarah Collins cordially invited to Tommy's 8th birthday celebration theme, superheroes and real heroes. I smiled, remembering last year's birthday party, the one I'd politely declined because Victoria had made it clear I wasn't welcome. This year felt different. Saturday afternoon, I arrived at Michael and Victoria's house carrying a special gift, a child-sized doctor's coat with Dr. Tommy embroidered on the pocket. Tommy had been fascinated by medicine since his hospital stay, asking endless questions about how his brain worked and why some kids got sick. Aunt Dr. Sarah. Tommy ran up to me wearing a Superman cape. Mom said you have a surprise for me. I do indeed. I handed him the wrapped package. His eyes lit up when he saw the white coat. Can I be a doctor like you? If you study hard and help people, you can be anything you want. Victoria approached, looking genuinely happy to see me. Over the past year, our relationship had transformed completely. She'd started volunteering at the children's hospital, reading to young patients during their treatments. Sarah, thank you for coming. And thank you for inspiring Tommy. He tells everyone he wants to be a pediatric neurologist. He's got time to decide. But he certainly has the curiosity for it. The party was filled with families from Tommy's school and the neighborhood. Several parents approached me throughout the afternoon, thanking me for saving their children or asking for medical advice. I realized Victoria had been talking about my work, proud rather than dismissive. During cake time, Tommy stood up with his slice and tapped his plastic fork against his juice cup. I want to make a speech, he announced in his clear, perfect voice, the voice we almost lost to his condition. Go ahead, buddy, Michael encouraged. Last year I got really sick and had to go to the hospital. I was scared, but then Aunt Dr. Sarah took care of me. She made my brain better so I could talk and think right. He looked directly at me. Mommy told me she was mean to you before I got sick. She said she didn't invite you to Christmas because she didn't understand that you save kids like me every day. Victoria's face flushed, but she didn't interrupt. I never thought I'd see my father cry. He was always the epitome of corporate strength, the man who built Morrison Industries from the ground up. But there he sat in his expensive leather chair, shoulders shaking as he held the foreclosure notice. We're ruined, he whispered, his voice cracking. 30 years of work, gone. My mother paced the study, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors. How could this happen, James? How could you let those investors take everything? I stood in the doorway, calculator in hand, going through the numbers again. The situation was dire. $200,000 in immediate debt, the company hemorrhaging money and aggressive investors circling like vultures. One wrong move and Morrison Industries would collapse, taking my family's legacy with it. I can help, I said quietly. They both turned to look at me as if just remembering I was there. My father's eyes narrowed. This isn't the time for jokes, Madeline. This is serious business. Of course. In their eyes, I was still the family disappointment. The daughter who'd walked away from the family business 5 years ago to start my own consulting firm. While my younger brother Michael had followed in Dad's footsteps, becoming Morrison Industries' golden boy, I'd chosen my own path. I have the money, I continued, pulling up my banking app. I can clear the debt today. My mother laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. What could you possibly have saved from your little consulting business? I bit back a retort. They had no idea that my little consulting business had grown into one of the most successful private equity firms in the city. I operated through holding companies and subsidiaries, keeping my name out of the spotlight. To them, I was still just their headstrong daughter who'd made the foolish choice to leave the family empire. I've done well, I said simply. Let me help. My father stood up, his 6 feet 2 inches frame towering over my 5 feet 4 inches. Done well. You work out of a tiny office downtown. Meanwhile, your brother is currently in Aspen skiing while the company collapses? I finished for him. Michael is networking with important clients. I pulled up my bank account and held out my phone. Both my parents fell silent as they saw the balance. My mother's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. That's impossible, she whispered. I can transfer the money right now, I said. No loans, no interest, no strings attached. Just let me help save the company. My father's pride warred with desperation on his face. The foreclosure notice crumpled in his grip as he thought about it. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. Fine. But this doesn't change anything. Once we're back on our feet. I know, I cut him off. I'm still the disappointment. I'm still not part of the real business world. Just give me the account details. Within an hour, I had transferred $200,000 to Morrison Industries' business account. I also quietly purchased several key contracts through one of my shell companies, ensuring they'd have stable income for the next few months. Not that they needed to know about that part. My mother touched my arm as I prepared to leave. Madeline, thank you. But please don't mention this to anyone. We don't want people thinking we needed charity. That word, charity, hit like a slap. 5 years of building my own empire, of making decisions that affected billion-dollar companies, reduced to charity in their eyes. Of course not, I smiled tightly. Heaven forbid anyone know your failure of a daughter helped save the family business. I drove home to my penthouse apartment, the one my parents had never seen because they always insisted on meeting at their house in the expensive part of town. The irony didn't escape me. My small consulting firm had just saved their precious company, and they were still ashamed of me. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Morrison Industries stabilized, thanks not only to my money but also to the contracts I'd quietly arranged. My father's confidence returned, and soon he was back to his usual boasting about Michael's latest achievements. Then came the dinner that changed everything. We have wonderful news, my mother announced over expertly cooked salmon. Michael's coming home next week. He's got big plans for modernizing the company. I pushed my food around my plate. Really? And what exactly are his plans? Well, my father beamed. He's been talking to some very influential people in Aspen. They're interested in new investment opportunities. Michael thinks we should restructure, maybe sell off some divisions. My fork clattered against my plate. Sell off divisions? Dad, those contracts are what's keeping the company afloat right now. What would you know about it? Michael had walked in, still in his designer ski wear, looking tanned and relaxed. Been playing businesswoman in your little office while I've been making real connections? He hadn't even been home when the company was collapsing. Hadn't answered his phone when Dad tried to reach him. But here he was, ready to dismantle everything I'd just saved. Michael, darling. Mom rushed to hug him. We didn't expect you until next week. Thought I'd surprise everyone. He dropped into the chair next to mine, smirking. So, sis, how's the small business life? Still giving advice to mom-and-pop shops? I thought about the major merger I'd orchestrated that morning, the billion-dollar deals waiting for my signature. It pays the bills. Speaking of paying bills, Michael turned to Dad. We need to talk about my ideas for the company. I've met some people who are very interested in acquiring our main divisions. Could be very profitable for us. You mean the divisions that are finally turning a profit again? I couldn't help asking. The ones with solid contracts for the next 3 years? Michael's eyes narrowed. Since when do you know anything about our contracts? That's enough, my father interrupted. Madeline, you gave up the right to comment on company business when you walked away 5 years ago. Michael understands the real corporate world. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The real corporate world? You mean the one where you nearly lost everything last month? The one where you needed my charity to survive? The room went deadly quiet. Michael looked between us, confusion evident on his face. What is she talking about? Nothing, my mother said quickly. Madeline's just being dramatic. She helped with a small cash flow issue, that's all. Small. I laughed. $200,000 is small now? Michael's face turned red. You took money from her? From my sister who can barely run a consulting business. Get out. My father's voice was cold. Get out of this house right now. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you serious? We don't need your charity or your opinions, he shouted, standing up so suddenly his chair toppled over. Get out. And don't come back until you learn your place. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. Michael just smirked, already pulling out papers to show Dad his brilliant plans for dismantling the company I'd just saved. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. You know what's funny? You're so convinced I'm a failure, you never bothered to check who's been buying up Morrison Industries stock for the past 3 years. Or who really owns those new contracts keeping you afloat. What are you talking about? Michael demanded. I smiled, reaching for the doorknob. I guess you'll find out at next week's board meeting. I hear there are some interesting changes coming to the company leadership. We don't want you at the board meeting, my father shouted after me. We don't want your money. We don't want anything from you. Too late, I said softly, closing the door behind me. The week before the board meeting passed in a flurry of texts and calls from my family, first angry, then pleading, then threatening. I ignored them all, focusing instead on finalizing my plans. Everything's ready, my assistant Emma confirmed, handing me the latest stock reports. We now control 51% of Morrison Industries through various subsidiaries. The board members have all been notified of the emergency meeting. I studied the numbers, thinking of my father's face when he'd thrown me out. Any response from the family? Your brother's been calling every investor he met in Aspen, trying to gather support. No luck. Emma smiled. Turns out ski resort connections aren't as valuable as he thought. The morning of the board meeting, I dressed carefully in a Chanel suit I'd never worn to family dinners. They'd only ever seen me in casual clothes, playing down my success to avoid their questions. Today that would change. I arrived early, watching through the one-way glass as the board members filed in. Most were old friends of my father's, men who'd patted me on the head as a child and later dismissed me as a foolish girl playing at business. My father arrived with Michael, both looking confident despite the emergency meeting notice. My mother slipped in behind them, though she wasn't on the board, probably expecting to celebrate Michael's brilliant plans for the company. At exactly 9 a.m., Emma opened the conference room door. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO of Phoenix Capital Partners and majority shareholder of Morrison Industries, Ms. Madeline Morrison. The silence was absolute as I walked in. My father's face went white. Michael's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. My mother gripped the back of a chair for support. Good morning, I said calmly, taking my place at the head of the table. Let's begin by discussing the recent attempt to sell off our most profitable divisions. This is ridiculous. Michael jumped up. You can't be the majority shareholder. That's impossible. I nodded to Emma, who began distributing folders. As you can see, Phoenix Capital Partners, through various subsidiaries, has been acquiring Morrison Industries stock for the past 3 years. We now own 51% of the company. Phoenix Capital. My father whispered, recognition dawning. Everyone in the business world knew Phoenix Capital. We were behind some of the biggest corporate turnarounds of the decade. That's your company. The same little consulting firm you've been mocking for years, I confirmed. Though we do a bit more than advise mom-and-pop shops. One of the board members, Mr. Richardson, cleared his throat. Ms. Morrison, your track record at Phoenix Capital is impressive, but surely you understand this is a family company. Oh, I understand family very well, I interrupted, my voice sharp. I understand watching this family nearly destroy itself through pride and poor management. I understand having to secretly buy up contracts to keep the company afloat while my brother was skiing in Aspen. Michael's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. Those contracts were my connections. Those contracts, I said quietly, were arranged by my firm using my relationships while you were taking selfies on the slopes. My father finally found his voice. Why didn't you tell us? All these years. Would you have believed me? I asked. When have you ever believed in anything I've done? The room fell silent again. In that silence, I opened my laptop and pulled up the company's financials. Now, let's discuss the actual state of Morrison Industries. Thanks to the contracts we arranged, the company is stable for the first time in years. However, significant changes are needed. You can't just take over. Michael shouted. Dad, do something. Our father sat there looking older than I'd ever seen him. She owns 51%, Michael. She can do whatever she wants. As I was saying, I continued, changes are needed. First, the current management team will be restructured. Mr. Richardson, your retirement package is in the blue folder. Mr. Wilson, yours is in the red one. The old men who dismissed me for years now couldn't meet my eyes as they opened their golden parachutes. Dad, I turned to my father, you'll be moved to an advisory position. Your experience is valuable, but it's time for new leadership. He nodded slowly, decades of pride finally crumbling. And Michael? I looked at my brother who was still standing, fists clenched. Michael's position has been eliminated, effective immediately. You can't fire me, he yelled. I'm your brother. Yes, you remind me of that every time you need something. But when was the last time you acted like a brother? When was the last time any of you acted like family? My mother, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Madeline, please. We can work this out as a family. Like we worked it out when you threw me out after I paid your debts? Or like we worked it out all those years you were ashamed of my little consulting business? She flinched. The time for family discussions is over, I said firmly. This is business. And in business, results matter more than blood ties. The meeting continued for another hour. I outlined my plans for the company. Real plans, based on market research and solid business principles, not connections made on ski slopes. By the end, even the remaining board members were nodding in agreement. As everyone filed out, my father lingered behind. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. All these years, he said quietly, I thought you'd failed. But you were building something bigger than I ever managed. I learned from watching you, I replied. I learned what to do and more importantly what not to do. The money last month. You could have taken over then. Why help us instead? I gathered my papers, thinking carefully before answering. Because despite everything, you're my father. I wanted to give you one last chance to see me as something other than a disappointment. And now I'm your boss. I suggest you take the weekend to clear out your office. Emma will help you set up in the advisory suite on Monday. He nodded, shoulders slumped, and walked out. Through the glass walls, I watched him join my mother and Michael in the lobby. They looked small somehow, their designer clothes and proud bearing no longer enough to fill the space they occupied. Emma brought me coffee as I sat down in what had been my father's chair. Congratulations, boss. Though I have to ask, why reveal yourself now? Why not stay in the shadows? I smiled, running my hand along the smooth wood of the desk where I'd once watched my father sign the documents that shaped our family's destiny. Because sometimes success isn't enough. Sometimes you need to stand in the light and show everyone who underestimated you exactly what they failed to see. Over the next few months, Morrison Industries transformed. Under my leadership, we expanded into new markets, modernized our operations and doubled our profit margins. The same board members who'd once dismissed me now hung on my every word. Michael eventually took a mid-level position at a competitor's firm, though I heard he rarely mentioned his connection to Morrison Industries anymore. My father adapted surprisingly well to his advisory role, perhaps finally understanding that his daughter had surpassed his greatest achievements. My mother still hosted family dinners, still tried to maintain the appearance of perfect family unity. I attended occasionally, more out of curiosity than obligation. It was interesting to watch them adapt to the new reality, one where their greatest disappointment had become their superior. Madeline, my mother said at one such dinner, I've been thinking about your little office downtown. Perhaps it's time you moved Phoenix Capital's headquarters to a more prestigious location. I sipped my wine, enjoying the moment. Oh, I don't work from that office anymore. That was just for show, to maintain my cover while I was buying up Morrison Industries stock. Phoenix Capital's headquarters takes up the top 10 floors of the Crystal Tower downtown. The Crystal Tower, the most expensive commercial real estate in the city. My mother nearly choked on her wine. But that's the building where Dad always wanted to move Morrison Industries, but could never afford? Yes, I know. Phoenix Capital bought it last year. In fact, we own most of the prime commercial real estate downtown. Michael, who'd been pushed by our mother to attend these dinners, turned pale. His new office was in a building I apparently owned. Don't worry about your lease, I told him kindly. I'm not that petty. Besides, your rent helps pay for my new yacht. The silence that followed was worth every minute of the past 5 years. Worth every dismissive comment, every condescending pat on the head, every proud announcement about Michael's latest accomplishment while my own achievements were ignored. Because success, I've learned, isn't just about making money or gaining power. Sometimes it's about standing in your father's office, sitting in his chair, and knowing that you've built something he never could. Sometimes it's about watching your arrogant brother realize that his entire future depends on your goodwill. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's about smiling at your mother across a dinner table and declining her suggestion to move your office, knowing that you own the very ground beneath her feet. They wanted me to learn my place. I did. It just wasn't the place they had in mind. The box wasn't particularly heavy, but my mother's disappointment made it weigh a ton as I carried it into our family's elegant foyer. Another package delivery to the house where I'd grown up. The house that represented everything my parents thought I should be but wasn't. Another delivery, Olivia? Mom's voice dripped with barely concealed disdain. I thought you were just doing this temporary thing until you found a real job. I set the package down carefully, adjusting my company jacket. Swift Logistics, the name I'd chosen when I started with just one van and a dream. This is my real job, Mom. My company's growing faster than a delivery service, she interrupted, shaking her head. 4 years at Princeton, MBA from Stanford, and you're delivering packages like somewhat, Mom. I straightened up, meeting her eyes. Some entrepreneur building a revolutionary logistics company. She turned away, unable to even look at me. Your sister's law firm just made her junior partner. Your brother's investment bank is featuring him in their annual report. And you're wearing a uniform and carrying boxes. I bit back the urge to tell her about the artificial intelligence system we'd developed that was revolutionizing delivery routing. About the fleet of 500 vehicles now bearing my company's logo. About the venture capital firms begging to invest in our next funding round. Instead, I just signed my delivery confirmation tablet. Have a nice day, Mom. Back in my van. Not really my van anymore since I had a whole fleet, but I still did personal deliveries to stay connected to the business. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my CFO, 2 from our lead investor, and a text from my brother Thomas. Family dinner tonight. Mom's upset about seeing you in that delivery uniform again. Maybe it's time to admit this experiment failed. Experiment. That's what they called my company. As if revolutionizing the logistics industry was just a phase I needed to get out of my system. I drove to Swift Logistics headquarters. Not that my family had ever visited. The gleaming 12-story building in downtown Seattle housed over 400 employees, our AI development team, and the most sophisticated logistics management system in the industry. Miss Chin, my assistant, greeted me as I stepped off the executive elevator. The board is waiting in the conference room. And the Goldman Sachs team is here for the IPO discussion. I smiled, thinking of Thomas's investment banking success. If he only knew his little sister was about to launch one of the biggest tech IPOs of the year. How are the new route optimization numbers looking? I asked, heading toward the conference room. Incredible. The AI system has reduced delivery times by 47% in test markets. UPS is asking for another meeting about licensing the technology. My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what she'd say. More comparisons to my siblings' respectable careers. More hints about corporate job openings. More shame about her daughter wasting her education on a delivery service. The board meeting was quick and productive. Our numbers were exceeding all projections. The AI-driven logistics system was revolutionizing the industry. Swift Logistics wasn't just delivering packages. We were transforming how goods moved around the world. The Financial Times wants to do a cover story, my PR director announced. They're calling Swift the Amazon of logistics with our integrated AI system. Hold off for now, I said, thinking of the IPO preparations. Let's keep things quiet until next quarter. That evening, I changed out of my Swift uniform into designer business wear for the family dinner. Not that it would matter. In their eyes, I'd always be the delivery girl who embarrassed them at country club gatherings. Our family's mansion was lit up like a corporate headquarters, which was fitting since every dinner felt like a board meeting where my life choices were scrutinized and found wanting. Olivia, my sister Margaret called out as I entered. She air-kissed my cheek, her law firm partner status practically radiating from her. Finally gave up the delivery route for the day? Something like that, I murmured, accepting a glass of wine from the housekeeper. Thomas stood by the fireplace, every inch the successful investment banker in his bespoke suit. You missed the club luncheon last week. Mrs. Harrison was asking about you. I covered by saying you were traveling. Thanks, I said dryly. Wouldn't want anyone to know I was building a successful company. Successful? Mom swept into the room, elegant as always in her dinner attire. Darling, driving a delivery van is hardly. Dinner is served, the housekeeper announced, saving me from another lecture. We took our usual seats at the formal dining table. Mom and Dad at the ends, Margaret and Thomas on one side, me alone on the other. The empty seat beside me seemed to emphasize my status as the family disappointment. Margaret, tell us about your latest case, Mom prompted, beaming with pride. As my sister launched into a detailed description of corporate law minutiae, I checked my phone under the table. A message from my CFO. Final IPO valuation numbers in. Underwriters projecting opening market cap at $12 billion. Olivia, Dad's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. Phone's away at dinner. Just because you work in service doesn't mean you can forget basic manners. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, suppressing a smile. My service company was about to be worth more than Margaret's entire law firm. Actually, Thomas added, straightening his tie, I might have a solution. My bank is looking for project managers in our logistics division. With your background, I'm sure I could. I'm good, thanks. I took a sip of wine. My company's keeping me pretty busy. Company, Margaret scoffed. You make it sound so corporate. You deliver packages, Olivia. It's hardly Goldman Sachs. If she only knew that Goldman Sachs was currently in my office, begging to underwrite our IPO. Speaking of packages, Mom interjected, the Andersons saw you making a delivery at their house last week. In uniform. Do you know how embarrassing that was to explain at the club? I set down my fork. What did you tell them? I said you were doing research for a consulting project. I could hardly tell them my Stanford MBA daughter was actually working as a delivery person. The shame in her voice was palpable. 4 years of building a revolutionary company, and all she saw was a daughter in a delivery uniform. You know, Thomas said, checking his banker's watch, I heard an interesting rumor at work today. Some tech logistics company is preparing for a major IPO. Supposedly revolutionary AI system for delivery optimization. Could be a good investment opportunity. I nearly choked on my wine. He was talking about my company, not realizing his embarrassing delivery service sister was about to become one of his bank's biggest IPO stories. That's nice, dear, Mom said dismissively. But let's talk about something important. Margaret, when is the law firm's charity gala? As the conversation drifted back to my siblings' achievements, I thought about the morning's board meeting. About the Forbes reporter waiting to interview me. About the valuation numbers that would soon make headlines. My phone buzzed again, this time with an alert from our AI system. A potential routing issue in our Southeast division. I stood up. Sorry, have to take care of something at work. What could be so urgent about delivering packages? Margaret asked, perfectly plucked eyebrows raised. You'd be surprised, I replied, heading for the door. Sometimes the biggest things come in small packages. Olivia, Mom called after me, please tell me you're at least thinking about real career options. I hate seeing you waste your potential like this. I paused in the doorway, thinking of the IPO announcement scheduled for next week. Of the Fortune 500 ranking that would soon have the Chin name on it. Just not the way my family expected. Don't worry, Mom. I think you'll be surprised by what I've been delivering. The morning of Swift Logistics IPO, I stood in my office overlooking Seattle's skyline, watching the sunrise paint the city gold. In a few hours, my embarrassing delivery service would debut on the New York Stock Exchange, transforming the logistics industry forever. Miss Chin. My assistant knocked softly. CNBC is set up for the live interview and the Wall Street Journal reporter is waiting. Also, your brother's investment bank called again about the IPO allocation. I smiled, imagining Thomas's face when he realized the mysterious logistics company he'd been chasing was his sister's delivery service. Tell them I'll be right there. And Sarah? Send me the final press package. My phone buzzed. Another message from Mom. Olivia, Mrs. Peterson saw you in that delivery uniform again. Please, if you need help finding a proper job. I set the phone aside and opened the press release that would soon hit every major news outlet. Swift Logistics, and Swift. Debuts in largest tech IPO of year. Revolutionary AI-driven logistics platform valued at $12 billion. Founder and CEO Olivia Chin becomes youngest female Fortune 500 CEO. The CNBC interview went smoothly. I explained our AI technology, our growth metrics, our vision for the future of logistics. The reporter was particularly interested in our proprietary routing algorithms that had cut delivery times in half. "And you built this from a single delivery van?" he asked, clearly impressed. "Sometimes the best way to revolutionize an industry is to understand it from the ground up," I replied, thinking of all the deliveries I still did personally. Halfway through the interview, my phone lit up with messages from Thomas. "What? The Swift Logistics IPO? That's your company? Why didn't you tell me? I've been working on this deal for months. Mom and Dad are watching CNBC right now." I focused on the interview, explaining how Swift's technology was transforming not just delivery services, but the entire supply chain industry. Our AI system wasn't just plotting routes. It was predicting demand patterns, optimizing warehouse locations, and revolutionizing how goods moved around the world. As soon as the interview ended, my CFO rushed in. "We're opening at $145 per share, 50% above the IPO price. The market's going crazy." I checked my phone again. Dozens of missed calls from family members. Text messages from Margaret about keeping secrets. And one voicemail from my mother, her voice shaking. "Olivia, we're watching the financial news. Your company, the IPO, please call us." But I had more important things to focus on. The opening bell ceremony was streaming live from New York, where our leadership team was ready to ring in Swift's public trading debut. On the massive screen in my office, I watched as our company logo lit up Times Square. "Trading has begun," my CFO announced. "Stocks already up 75%. You're officially a billionaire, Olivia." I thought about all the family dinners where they dismissed my work. All the country club whispers about the Chin daughter, playing delivery person. All the times my mother had tried to hide my occupation from her friends. "Miss Chin." My assistant appeared again. "Your parents and siblings are here. They're quite insistent." I straightened my Swift Logistics jacket, the same uniform my mother had been so ashamed of. "Send them in." They burst into my office like a storm of designer clothes and disbelief. Mom stopped short, taking in the expansive space, the wall of awards, the live stock ticker showing Swift's soaring share price. "Olivia," she whispered. This is your company? Welcome to Swift Logistics World Headquarters," I said calmly. "Or as you preferred to call it, my delivery service." Thomas stepped forward, still clutching his banker's portfolio. "Why didn't you tell us? I've been analyzing this IPO for weeks. The AI technology, the growth metrics, the market penetration. It's revolutionary. Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "When all you saw was your little sister delivering packages?" Margaret sank into one of my office's leather chairs. "The Financial Times article. That was about you. The future of logistics. Turns out delivering packages was more than just an embarrassment to the family name," I said, turning to face the wall of screens showing Swift's operations across the country. "Our AI system has transformed how goods move around the world. Those packages you were so ashamed of me delivering? They were building this." My mother stepped closer, her hand trembling as she touched my company jacket. "All those deliveries. You were the CEO. Why did you keep doing them?" "Because great leaders understand their business from the ground up. Every package I delivered taught me something about making this company better." The office door opened again. This time it was Mrs. Peterson, one of Mom's country club friends whose home I'd delivered to just last week. But she wasn't here for a delivery. "Olivia, congratulations on the IPO." She rushed forward to hug me. "I just had to come thank you in person. Our company's partnership with Swift has transformed our entire distribution system." Mom's face went pale. "Partnership? Oh yes," Mrs. Peterson gushed. "Swift's technology has cut our logistics costs by 40%. Olivia's been personally overseeing the integration. Such a brilliant young CEO." After Mrs. Peterson left, my family stood in stunned silence. The stock ticker kept climbing. My phone kept buzzing with congratulations from business leaders and media outlets. "The charity gala," Mom finally said, her voice small. "The law firm event next week." Would you, would you consider being our keynote speaker? I looked at my sister who had so proudly announced her junior partnership at that same dinner where they'd mocked my delivery uniform. Sorry, I'm speaking at the World Economic Forum that week. But I'm sure Margaret will do a great job. Olivia, Dad stepped forward. We were wrong. So wrong. About everything. No, Dad. You were wrong about what success looks like. About thinking there's only one path to making a difference in the world. I picked up a small package from my desk. The last delivery I'd made before the IPO. Every box, every delivery, every route we optimize. It's all part of building something revolutionary. You just couldn't see it because it didn't fit your definition of success. Thomas was still staring at the stock ticker. My bank's analysts are calling Swift the most innovative logistics company in history. That's my little sister. Not so little anymore, I smiled. In fact, Swift just acquired your bank's logistics division. Surprise. The rest of the day passed in a blur of media interviews, congratulatory calls, and stock price updates. By closing bell, Swift Logistics had become one of the most successful tech IPOs in history. That evening, as the city lights twinkled below my office window, I changed into my delivery uniform one last time. There was still one package I needed to deliver personally. I found my mother in their empty mansion, watching CNBC's coverage of Swift's historic trading day. Special delivery, I said, holding out a small box. Inside was my old Stanford MBA diploma, along with a note. Some deliveries change the world. Love, your daughter, the CEO. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. I was so focused on the uniform I couldn't see the empire you were building. That's the thing about packages, Mom. You never know which one might contain something revolutionary. 1 year later, Swift Logistics had transformed from a delivery service into a global technology leader. Our AI system had become the industry standard. The Fortune 500 ranking that had once seemed like an impossible dream now listed Swift firmly in the top 100. And my family? They finally understood that success doesn't always wear a lawyer's suit or carry a banker's portfolio. Sometimes it wears a delivery uniform and carries the future, one package at a time. The Swift Logistics jacket still hangs in my office, not as a reminder of shame, but as a symbol of how every great journey starts with a single step. Or in my case, a single delivery. Because sometimes the biggest success stories aren't about escaping your roots, but about growing them into something beyond anyone's imagination. Even if that means delivering a few packages along the way.